So this is the second recording in our speed reading series. The first one looked very much at how to approach academic reading. How does academic reading differ to some of the other reading that we might do? This one will look specifically at a strategy for active reading, and then the final one looks for ways of actually actively speeding up our reading. So this is one particular approach to active academic reading, and as we mentioned in the last one, academic reading is all about engaging with the text, and here is a kind of 5-step strategy to do that. First of all, to survey the material, then to ask questions of it, then we actually do the reading. So the reading doesn't come at the start, the reading comes kind of halfway through the process. Then to be able to recite and review what we've actually read. So what do we mean when we talk about scanning? So scanning, first of all, is something that we do all the time. How do we make choices about what we read? We look at the title, we might look at the abstract, the journal article, the introduction, we might look at the blurb on the back of a book. What's it about? Is it relevant to my subject area? We might go to the index. If something that you're looking to find out more about isn't listed in the index, then possibly the book isn't worth reading in the first place. Once you've made a decision to actually engage a bit more with the article or the book, we scan our eye over the text. We're going to start identifying specific words, phrases. Again, does this look like there's enough information on the particular topic that I'm interested in? Now, with a journal article, more often than not, there'll be more structure to it than possibly there will to a book, but hopefully you'll be able to find some form of headings or subheadings. If there are any figures or data or images, you can often get a lot more information out of those very, very quickly than you can by reading pages of text. As we said, look at the contents, look at the index, look at the references as well. Are there things in there that you've already read? Or if this is perhaps the first book or article that you're looking at, is this going to give you clues about where to take your research afterwards? Because we very rarely read something in total isolation. So at this point, we start to evaluate the relevance and usefulness for our purpose. And as I've mentioned before, what might be useful for somebody else may have no relevance for you. The argument that you might be making really might be quite different to somebody else, even if they're answering the same question. If you feel that you should read further, if you feel that you need to get more information out of this, then decide which part, because you're probably not going to have time to read the whole thing. But it may be that you've already answered a question. You may have got the gist of this person's argument. That may be enough for you to add that into your essay. So scanning is very top level. Skim reading is delving into a little bit more detail. So this is moving through the text, looking in a little bit more information, not just looking at the headers, actually looking at the content between them. We might start to note down a few key points. We might get a sense of where the argument's going. Sometimes it's helpful to read the first and last paragraph of a section, or even the first and last sentence of a paragraph. A good writer should introduce what they're going to say, then they should say it, and then they should tell you what they've said. And so if it's well structured, you should be able to get a real sense of what this person's trying to say. Obviously, the details, you might then need to go back and look at those with a little bit more focus. But as we've said, constantly asking yourself, what are you after from this? And you might be able to get that just through this skim reading. And what we've mentioned before is that we constantly need to question, from what we've already read, is this taking our argument any further? Or is it really restating the same sorts of arguments? What is the unique contribution of this article or this book that you're reading? Does it make you want to find out more? Are there unanswered questions? Are there things that you still want to get from this text? As soon as you answer those questions, you can stop reading. So it's really important to pause before you actually open a book, before you start reading a journal article. Have a really clear set of objectives, what you want to get from this, and as soon as those objectives have been met, move on to your next reading. That's how we can move through material quickly. This is quite a nice little matrix, the know, want to know, and what have we learned. And this is one of the note-making techniques that we look at in the note-making presentations. This little grid helps you keep on track. It's really easy to kind of get lost in readings, to kind of feel overwhelmed by them, but the more strategic we can be, the more it's actually just about solving a particular problem, and this structure will help you in that. So first of all, identify what do you know? Why you, as we've said, why are you reading this in the first place? What more do you want to know? What is left unanswered from all the reading that you've done so far, lectures you've attended, writings that you've done? And then you can fill in what you've learned as you go along. And that keeps you on track. That keeps you answering those really specific questions and stops you going off at a tangent. Now, of course, sometimes you need to read really broadly. This might be a new topic. This might be something that's unfamiliar to you, and you really want to delve into this in a lot of detail. But as you go along, it's likely that the want to know column, you get fewer and fewer questions in there, and then what you've learned, hopefully very quickly you can tick that off and you can delve in because you have been looking at that text strategically. You know where that information is going to be positioned. And so only now are we doing the reading. You know, we've asked ourselves loads of questions before. Keep reading, keep focused, and then think, well, what do we want to do with that? As we've said, that kind of so what? I've read this. Where's this going to take me? So reciting and reviewing, this is the really active part of active reading. This is the bit that's actually going to help move you on in terms of your learning and your research. So you've answered the questions, perhaps in your head. Make sure you've done that in writing as well. Explain what you've read in your own words. And if you can get some of these summaries down actually into your notes, then you can just lift them straight out and put them straight into your writing. Sometimes quite a good way to do that is to imagine that someone's called you up, asked what you've been doing. You can say, oh, I've been doing some reading. And then they say, well, what was the reading about? And you then explain to them. And you don't just describe it, but you explain it in the context of what you're working on, whether or not it was useful or not. Has it moved your argument on? Actually, has it left loads of gaps? And you're thinking that tomorrow you're going to have to do some more reading. Those are the sorts of critical questions that you need to engage with. And until you can have that critical perspective, you still need to carry on engaging with the text. It's not just enough to say you've done the reading and moving on to the next book or the next article. You really need to kind of close the loop on that particular bit of reading that you've done. And the more that you can talk to peers about what you're reading, the more that's going to give you that kind of critical perspective. It's going to feed into your ideas. It's going to help you articulate the usefulness of what you've read. In the third and final section of our speed reading presentations, we'll be looking at ways of actually speeding up the words per minute that we read, as well as a kind of complementary approach to this more strategic reading.